The sun was sinking low over the dusty streets of Dry Creek, casting long shadows across the wooden storefronts. Inside the Silver Spur Saloon, a haze of smoke and laughter mixed with the clatter of poker chips and the occasional shout. Cristina Malone leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowed at the table in front of her. Cards were fanned out neatly in her hand, but her focus was on the man across from her, Clyde Thompson. The quiet cowboy with a reputation as steady as the river gave nothing away. His hat sat low over his eyes, hiding any hint of emotion. Cristina had heard whispers about him, how he never lost, how he played with patience and precision. But she had a trick or two of her own. "You're bluffing," she said, her voice sharp, almost a challenge. Clyde's jaw tightened. He didn't answer, just pushed a stack of chips forward. The room seemed to pause. Even the piano player in the corner slowed, as if sensing the tension at the table. Cristina smirked, her own stack of chips towering in front of her. "I said you're bluffing," she repeated. She pushed all her chips into the center. All in. A hush fell over the saloon. Patrons leaned forward, eyes glued to the showdown. Clyde finally raised his head, those dark eyes meeting hers. He gave a slow nod, and then he too pushed his chips forward. The cards were revealed. Cristina's grin widened. "Royal flush," she announced. A cheer erupted from the spectators. Clyde's hand a straight flush was impressive, but it wasn't enough. "Looks like the saloon's mine," Cristina said, standing up and brushing off her skirt. The weight of the deed settled on her shoulders. Owning a saloon wasn't just about wealth. It was about power, control, and keeping a town in line. She'd never intended to buy one outright, but Lacan's skill had handed it to her. Clyde didn't smile. He gathered his cards slowly and slid them back into his leather case. "Guess I'm out of luck tonight," he said quietly. His voice was low, calm, and for some reason it unsettled her more than any boastful rival ever could. "Actually," Cristina said, tapping her chin thoughtfully, "I don't think I can run this place alone." She studied him, seeing the way he assessed the room, the way he moved with quiet authority. "You seem like you know what you're doing. How about you run it with me?" Clyde raised an eyebrow. "Run it together." "Yes," she said, voice firm. "You keep the troublemakers in line. I'll handle the business side. You and me, partners." He studied her for a long moment. The poker face he wore at the table didn't leave him here either. But beneath that quiet exterior, Cristina thought she saw something, maybe curiosity, maybe the hint of a challenge. "I don't do partnerships," he said finally. Cristina leaned closer, a sly smile on her lips. "Well, you just lost a poker game to a woman. You're not leaving, are you?" Clyde let out a soft chuckle, the first real sound from him all evening. "Maybe I'll stick around. To make sure your luck doesn't run out." The deal was made, silently, in the space between them. Cristina felt a thrill of excitement. This wasn't just about owning a saloon, it was about keeping the peace in a town that had never seen a woman take the reins. And doing it with a man who was as mysterious as the desert at night. Outside, the sky darkened to a deep purple, and the saloon lights flickered against the windows. Inside, glasses clinked, laughter bounced off the walls, and a new partnership had begun. Cristina and Clyde, bound by luck, skill, and a bit of stubbornness, were about to write their story in the dust and whiskey of Dry Creek. The morning after her big win, Cristina strode into the Silver Spur Saloon with a sense of triumph and a healthy dose of nerves. Dust clung to her boots as she pushed open the swinging doors. The place was quiet now. The echoes of last night's poker game replaced by the smell of polished wood and spilled whiskey drying on the floor. Clyde was already there, leaning against the bar with his arms crossed. His hat was tilted just enough to shadow his eyes, but his sharp gaze missed nothing. "Morning," he said, voice low. "Morning," Cristina replied, brushing hair from her face. She surveyed the room, imagining the chaos and laughter it would see once business picked up. "Looks like a mess, doesn't it? Looks like every saloon in town before a sweep, Clyde said. His tone carried a hint of amusement, but his eyes stayed alert. He gestured toward the back. We've got deliveries today. If we don't keep track, that's trouble waiting to happen. Cristina nodded. She wasn't a stranger to hard work, but running a saloon was a different kind of challenge, one that demanded patience, brains, and grit. All right, she said. We do this together. You take the back and handle the shipments. I'll get the front ready. The day started with the usual bustle. Patrons trickled in for breakfast. Cowboys fresh off the trail, miners wiping dust from their boots, and a few townfolk curious to see the new owner. Cristina smiled at them, her charm ready, while Clyde kept a quiet watch, his hand near his revolver. By noon, though trouble found them, a group of rowdy cattle hands stumbled through the doors, laughing too loud and knocking over a chair. The air grew tense, and Cristina's stomach tightened. She glanced at Clyde. He didn't move immediately. He simply watched, calculating, waiting. Afternoon. Ladies, one of the men slurred, tipping his hat in a mocking gesture. Heard the new boss is a woman. Thought we'd come introduce ourselves. Cristina's sharp tongue came to life. Well, you're introducing yourselves rather loudly. Might want to tone it down before someone teaches you manners. The man chuckled, stepping closer, thinking this was a game. He didn't notice Clyde behind him until the cowboy's hand landed firmly on his shoulder. I suggest you take a seat, Clyde said, voice calm but carrying a weight that brooked no argument. The men hesitated, realizing too late that this quiet cowboy wasn't just an observer. Tension thickened, and for a moment, it seemed the saloon might erupt into chaos. But then, slowly, the men backed down, muttering insults under their breath, but leaving the saloon in order. Cristina exhaled, letting her shoulders relax. She shot Clyde a grateful glance. Thanks, she said. He shrugged. Just doing my job. But the incident had given them both a taste of what was coming. Running the saloon wasn't just about cards, drinks, or profits. It was about managing people who tested limits, challenged authority, and sometimes tried to start a fight. Cristina realized she was in for more than she'd anticipated. By evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, the saloon was lively again. Music, laughter, and the clink of glasses filled the room. Cristina found herself standing near the bar, watching Clyde move among the patrons with an effortless authority. She couldn't help noticing the way he commanded respect without raising his voice. How people listened to him, even when he barely said a word. It was unsettling and exhilarating, this place. It's going to be a challenge, Cristina said quietly. Clyde looked at her, a flicker of a smile tugging at his lips. That's why it's worth it. As night settled over Dry Creek, Cristina realized that she and Clyde weren't just partners in running a saloon. They were partners in navigating a town that had no patience for weakness, only for skill, nerve, and determination. And both of them had plenty of all three. The Silver Spur had survived its first day under new ownership, but Cristina knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, the town of Dry Creek woke to a sun that burned brighter than usual, and the Silver Spur Saloon was already buzzing with activity. Cristina moved behind the bar with practiced ease, polishing glasses and checking supplies, while Clyde handled deliveries out back. But something felt off. The usual rhythm of the saloon, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, the soft chatter was missing. In its place was a tension that Cristina couldn't shake. She glanced toward the entrance just as a cloud of dust rose from the street. A group of men on horseback rode into town, their faces hidden under wide-brimmed hats, dust swirling around their boots. Cristina's stomach tightened. She had heard whispers about a gang that liked to collect from local businessmen who didn't care for rules, only for fear. Clyde, she called, voice low but firm. He appeared at her side instantly, eyes narrowing as he followed her gaze. They're heading this way, he said, quiet, deliberate. His hand rested on the rail of the bar, near the revolver he kept holstered. The men dismounted outside and sauntered toward the saloon, boots tapping against the wooden sidewalk. Their leader, a tall man with a jagged scar across his cheek, pushed open the door. "Well, well," he said, voice like gravel. "Looks like we've got ourselves a new saloon in town." Cristina squared her shoulders. "And we run it just fine without visitors like you," she said. The man laughed, loud and rough. "We're not visitors, little lady. We're collectors. And we collect from everyone in Dry Creek." Before she could reply, Clyde stepped forward, his calm demeanor like a dam holding back a rising river of tension. "Not from this saloon," he said evenly. The scarred man's smile faltered slightly, just enough for Cristina to notice. "Is that right?" he sneered. "And what if we don't agree?" Clyde's hand twitched near his holster. "Then we have a problem," he said, voice low and steady. Cristina felt her pulse race, but not with fear. With Clyde here, she realized they could face almost anything. She moved closer to him, ready to back him up, and to make sure that no one underestimated her either. A tense silence filled the room, broken only by the soft creak of the saloon doors swinging in the breeze. Then the scarred man laughed again, though this time it was sharper, less confident. "Fine," he said, "we'll leave for now. But remember, little lady, this isn't over." With that, the gang retreated, mounting their horses and kicking up dust as they disappeared down the street. Cristina let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Clyde's gaze lingered on the doorway, long after the last rider had gone. "You handled that well," she said finally, her voice a mix of admiration and relief. He shrugged, but there was a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "We handled it together." For a moment, their eyes met, and Cristina felt a connection stronger than any poker hand or saloon victory. It was the understanding that, in a town like Dry Creek, partnership meant more than just business, meant trust, and perhaps even something closer to loyalty. By the time evening fell, the saloon was back to its usual lively self. Cristina and Clyde moved among the patrons, their unspoken bond growing with every shared glance and quiet word. They had faced danger together and come out stronger, and Cristina realized that the thrill of owning a saloon wasn't just in the cards. It was in standing, shoulder to shoulder, with someone she could rely on. As the last notes of the piano faded and the crowd thinned, Cristina and Clyde exchanged a look, knowing that whatever the gang had threatened, it was only a matter of time before Dry Creek's underworld came back knocking. And when they did, the Silver Spur would be ready. The next morning, Dry Creek's streets were unusually quiet. But inside the Silver Spur Saloon, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Cristina arranged bottles on the shelves, while Clyde counted the day's earnings. Their partnership had settled into a rhythm, though neither of them would admit it out loud. "Another quiet morning," Cristina said, polishing a glass and glancing toward the door. "Too quiet." Clyde didn't answer right away. His eyes, sharp as ever, scanned the street outside. "Something's coming," he said finally. "And I don't think it's a dust storm." Cristina's brow furrowed. "You mean trouble?" "Always trouble in Dry Creek," he replied dryly. Yet his tone carried a warning. Her words had barely left her lips when the Red River Saloon's owner, a brash man named Hank Connors, strutted in with a smug grin. Hank was known for stirring trouble, especially when a new saloon tried to claim a foothold in town. "Well, if it isn't the new girl with a cowboy sidekick," Hank sneered, glancing at Clyde. "I hear you've been collecting customers. Think you can run a real saloon?" Cristina's hands tightened around the glass. "This is a real saloon," she said, meeting his gaze without flinching. "And we're doing just fine." Hank laughed, but his eyes flicked to Clyde, clearly sizing him up. "That quiet one with you think he can handle the kind of trouble that comes with running a business?" Clyde's jaw tightened, but he remained still, letting Cristina handle the confrontation. She stepped forward, voice steady, almost teasing. "He doesn't need to handle trouble. I do, and trust me, I know my way around a saloon." Hank's grin faltered slightly. "We'll see about that." I've got plans for this town, and I don't intend to let anyone, especially a woman, get in my way. Christina's eyes flashed. Plans don't scare me. Try me. For a tense moment, the room was silent, the air thick with rivalry and unspoken threats. Then Hank waved a dismissive hand. "I'll be back," he said, turning toward the door. "And when I am, you'd better be ready." Once he left, Cristina exhaled slowly. Clyde finally spoke, voice calm but firm. "You handled him well." She shot him a glance, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. "So did you. I don't think anyone's going to mess with us not while we're together." The day went on, but the tension lingered. Cristina couldn't shake the feeling that Hank's return would bring more than just business rivalry. She found herself watching Clyde more closely than usual, how his hand rested casually near his revolver, how his eyes never left the room for long, and how calm he stayed, even when the town seemed poised for chaos. By evening, the saloon was packed again, and Cristina and Clyde moved through the crowd with practiced ease. The piano played, glasses clinked, and patrons laughed, yet the underlying tension of the day made every sound sharper, every shadow longer. At closing time, Cristina and Clyde stood outside, the night air cool against their skin. Dry Creek was quiet once more, the dust settling on empty streets. "You think Hank's going to back off?" Cristina asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Clyde shook his head slowly. "No, he's patient. And patient men are usually dangerous." Cristina looked at him, realizing something she hadn't admitted before. She trusted him, not just with the saloon, not just with the business, but with herself, and perhaps somewhere beneath the dust. Whiskey and poker chips, something more than partnership, was beginning to grow. They stood together in silence for a moment, the faint glow of the saloon lights behind them, knowing that whatever came next, whether trouble from Hank, the rival gang, or the unpredictable streets of Dry Creek, they would face it as a team. The Silver Spur Saloon had survived threats before, but Cristina knew that with Clyde by her side, they were ready for anything. The sun sank low over Dry Creek, painting the streets in gold and shadow. The Silver Spur Saloon was quiet, almost too quiet, as Cristina adjusted the last of the chairs and polished the bar for the night. She sensed it before she saw it, the faint clatter of hooves and the heavy tread of boots against the wooden sidewalk. Hank Connors and his gang had returned, their faces hard and eyes gleaming with malice. They had come prepared this time, armed and ready to take what they thought was theirs. Cristina's stomach tightened, but she didn't let it show. She glanced at Clyde, who stood at the far end of the bar, calm and steady, as always. "Ready?" she asked softly. Clyde tipped his hat slightly. "Always." The gang burst through the saloon doors, the sound of spurs and laughter filling the room. Hank's voice cut through the tension. "I warned you, Cristina. Time to hand over the saloon." Cristina squared her shoulders. "Not happening." Clyde moved like a shadow, stepping between Hank and the bar, his hand brushing the revolver at his hip. The room seemed to hold its breath as the standoff stretched on, each second a test of nerves and patience. Hank lunged forward, but Clyde was quicker, intercepting him with a steady hand that didn't waver. Patrons ducked behind tables, whispers of fear and awe filling the saloon. Cristina realized then that she and Clyde weren't just defending a building, they were defending their hard-won partnership, their reputation, and the sense of control they had fought to claim. "You really think you can take us all?" Hank sneered, trying to push past Clyde. Cristina stepped forward, voice sharp and unwavering. "I don't have to think. I know we can." She moved with confidence, placing herself strategically near the door, ready to block any attempt to escape or harm the patrons. Clyde's revolver gleamed as he aimed with precision, but it was his calm authority that truly kept the gang at bay. Slowly, methodically, Hank's men realized they were outmatched not by force alone, but by strategy, confidence, and teamwork. The standoff ended almost as suddenly as it began. Hank glared, chest heaving, and then spat on the floor. "This isn't over," he growled, retreating with the rest of his gang. Cristina let out a long breath, feeling the tension drain from her body. Clyde exhaled too, his stoic expression softening as he gave her a brief nod. "That was something," Cristina said, a smile tugging at her lips, despite the adrenaline still coursing through her. Clyde's eyes met hers, dark and steady. "We did it together." She felt it in that moment. The trust, the connection, the thrill of standing side by side through danger. Cristina realized she hadn't just won a saloon in a poker game. She had won a partner, a confidant, and perhaps something even more. As night settled over Dry Creek, the saloon filled once more with laughter, music, and the gentle hum of celebration. Cristina and Clyde moved among the patrons, their unspoken bond strengthened by the day's trials. Cristina leaned slightly closer to Clyde. "Think we're ready for whatever comes next?" He smirked, just the faintest hint. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." And as the lights flickered and the piano played, the Silver Spur Saloon stood strong. A testament to luck, skill, and the unshakable partnership of a sharp-tongued woman and a quiet cowboy. So, if you enjoyed this thrilling Western story and want to see more tales of courage, love, and adventure from the Wild West, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Western stories.